Hello there, fellow humans, and welcome to the 122 TM review. And just like you, I am not going to make the mistake of buying the 122 TM. Now, the M41D is quite nice, but obviously, in this bundle, it is absolute garbage. Now, what you have here, you have a 122 TM that is sold for 15,000 gold in this bundle, and for 12,000 gold on its own. Now, mind you, no tank at tier 8 is ever worth more than 10,000, especially not if it's completely blank, like this bundle where it's simply the tank and the garage slot. No tier 8 tank is ever worth more than 10,000. That's why we have the MX-M449 here, which is a great deal. I made a video about it yesterday. Check it out if you are interested, because even though this is still more than it was sold for previously, this is a relatively good deal. And you also have the T34 here, which is a great budget option. I already made a video on that as well. Now, you also have this thing, which again, the same thing applies. It is not worth it. No tank at tier 8 is ever worth more than 10,000 gold. And this thing isn't worth it at all. So don't get it. So we've done that. And now let's get back to the 122 TM though, because you do have a somewhat okay tank here, but for 12,000 gold, you're completely overpaying. So what I'd say is let's compare it with some others to get an idea of the stats, how it works, and then let's play a tank that is better and cheaper. Let's have a look at these stats, and basically what this tank is summed up as is it's okay, but not great. And that is not worth 12,000 gold. Now you have 2,000 DPM, 203 penetration, 270 on the premium rounds. You do have decent aim time and accuracy, obviously worse than a lot of the other tier 8 mediums here, and also worse than the MX-M449. You have 10 degrees of gun depression on the MX. You only have 7 on the WZ, which is obviously another bummer. Now, obviously, the T34-3 only has 5, but the T34-3 is bad. So there is that. In terms of mobility, it is actually slower than the MX-M449. As you can see here, the effective power-to-weight ratio is slightly lower than that of the MX-M49, which is going to lead to worse acceleration. Good job, Wargaming. You made a medium tank slower than a heavy. Now, it does traverse slightly faster, but it is significantly slower than all other medium tanks here, besides the Chimera, which is also not that great in terms of mobility. Now, you do have somewhat decent hull armor at 130, but then again, the Chimera also has 120, and that thing gets penetrated very easily as well. Now, we can ignore that down here. Only 500 players, and it's a very new tank. It's only been sold in crates, so on average, only whales are going to have it, whereas with the others, they were sold more affordably, so there are going to be sort of a more diverse pool of players involved. So what we have here basically is we have a relatively in-the-middle vehicle with horrible mobility, decent armor, and a somewhat okay gun for what it's trying to do. Now, what would this tank be worth? Well, certainly not more than the MX-M449, which is currently sold for 8,000 gold in a bundle, so the tank value is going to be around 7,000 there. So this thing should be sold for 6,000, not 12,000. Rather than wasting my money on a tank that is going to just settle dust in the garage anyway after 2 battles, after the video is over, I'm going to play the Chimera because this thing is cheaper and also better. Now, what are the differences between this one and the 122 TM, so you can sort of imagine how it plays. The 122 TM has worse alpha damage, does have worse gun depression, does have slightly better turret armor, but also has worse mobility. So, overall, you basically trade a tiny bit of security for a lot of combat ability, which is not great. So, ideally, you want to have this one because it's also cheaper. And if you're a new player, you just go for the MX-M49 or the T34. They're both cheaper, and they're also better at forgiving mistakes, and they're also better at making creds and doing damage. So, yeah, basically what you have here is you have a collector's tank at a absolutely extortionate price that is simply not worth it. And if you are wanting to collect all the vehicles, then yeah, I would simply just wait for this vehicle to be available at a reasonable price, which is somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 gold for the tank alone. So that might take a while for that to happen, because obviously Wargaming loves to overprice their new tanks, you know, be like people are going to think like, oh my god, it's new, it's great, and then they're going to find out, oops, it's actually garbage. And that is the case with a lot of these new tanks. They're completely overpriced and completely not worth it. Same goes for the CDA, obviously. So, I'm not going to make a CDA review because it's a tank store. I'm not a fan of tank stores. It's overpriced garbage as well, so just ignore it, basically. And, yeah. Don't ignore me, though. Or you can, I don't know. I don't judge. But if you don't ignore me, then, you know, like and subscribe. And also become a member if you want to. Obviously, to sum up the video, don't buy the goddamn 122 TM. Don't buy any tier 8 that is worth more than 10,000. There is absolutely no reason to buy this tank now. There is absolutely no point in buying it. The tank itself is somewhat decent, but like the Scepter, it is it's basically a different skin on the same thing for an absolutely way too much price, which is not worth it. It's that simple. And with a camera, you might have a slightly bit less armor on the camera. However, you have higher alpha damage, higher gun suppression, which makes the tank more versatile. And if you have higher alpha damage, you have to peek less, which means that you are essentially safer. Because the less times you have to peek, the less times you also have to use the armor. So that just end up at roughly the same there. And Tiger 2, there we go. Now we're going to go forward. 3,000 damage already done. And now it's going to try to... I think he has a 240 alpha gun, so it should be fine. Yep, I will be fine. And now I can probably also take him out. There we go. Goodbye. Beautiful. And now it is a 3v1. So this thing is great. This thing is cheaper. If it comes back in the shop, get this one. If you can't wait, then definitely go for the MXM 449, because that is an amazing tank as well. And I can definitely recommend that as well. And obviously, the only tank that is ever worth 10,000 gold in a bundle is probably something like a T-54 E2. And that's it then. And then everything else is just overpriced and trash. And look at that, it even has armor sometimes. So, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Don't buy the 122 TM. Buy the MX instead. And if you haven't seen the video, maybe watch that as well. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye.